glad we can be here with you at this convention and have this meeting. And I like conventions because you might come and, doing things in the world, going to school, things at home or whatever, and you're a little stressed out or stretched or, burnt out or whatever it could be, tired out. But you feel like refreshed at the convention. You meet with the Lord and you worship and you talk about the Lord with friends and get good fellowship. And, that's what I love about the conventions or camps or, those times you get together, right? In youth groups and different times. But have you ever noticed, and maybe you haven't, but I have, that maybe, you come home from camp or something or convention and it's Monday and you're feeling pretty good and you're remembering the messages. Then by Friday, you're kind of like, what were they speaking about again? Because I'm not doing what they were saying. I'm not feeling it. Seems like I'm having trouble getting the victory in it and stuff. It's kind of like, God fills you up, and then by Friday or, a few days after, it's like, oh, where did that all go? I used to have a full vessel, but it all leaked out. And now I'm empty. What do I do? Well, I want to look at a verse with you in Jeremiah chapter 2. And, the Lord was dealing with Israel about this very thing. In Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 13. Now this is a pretty negative context, but this was Israel. They were always giving the Lord trouble here. But let's read at what God was dealing with Israel, because He wanted to fill them, but it's like it kept disappearing. In Jeremiah 2:13 it says, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and they've hewn them out, or they've carved out cisterns, broken cisterns, that can hold no water." Now, I want to just consider with you these things that Israel did, and I think maybe it'll help us realize how things are happening, because we're talking about things we can't see, right? I mean, you don't, at least I don't think any of you do. You have a dipstick or anything you can check your spiritual level, just like, oh, well, I'm pretty good. It's not leaking out, and put it back and check it later, and oh, no, I'm still good. These things are invisible, right? You kind of have to guess. You have to judge in your spirit how you're doing and figure out what's going on and, what's causing a leak. Is there a leak? It's really hard to tell in your spirit if there's a leak. But, the Lord can help us. And that's what the Lord was trying to deal with Israel. Because they had done two things. You see, the first thing they did is, the Lord said, they forsook the fountain of living waters. They weren't even seeking it. They weren't even going to conventions or camps or special meetings, trying to meet with the Lord. They didn't even do that anymore. Instead, they had made these cisterns and were trying to fill them up with water. But the problem is that they had big cracks in them. In the water, as much as water as they would pour into them, it was just leaking out right into the ground. And that's a big problem, right? If you're trying to fill up your bathtub to take a bath and the drain's unplugged, you're not going to have much water to take a bath, right? So, that was really the issue. And so the Lord was saying, Israel, you're not seeking me. You've replaced me with other things, and those other things will never satisfy. They'll never satisfy. And so I just want to consider these cisterns. That's kind of it's a word we don't really use much anymore, but basically a cistern was in the desert. If you go to Israel today, a lot of them have wells and they're drawing their water from up north. But back in the day, they relied on whatever water came, rainwater, and they had to capture it in these cisterns. So they would dig a hole in the ground and they would line it with this lime mortar. And so that the rainwater would run into there and they'd capture it, and then they'd have this water that they could go to. If it hasn't rained in a while, or the creek is low or something, they can get into that, and that's their drinking water for however long until it rains again. And sometimes they had seasons where it was, months without rain. And sometimes there would be several in a town, and it was vital that these cisterns didn't crack. Because if they cracked and they lost all their water, that'd be big trouble. They'd probably have to desert and go to somewhere else where they could find water and somehow bring it back or something. I don't know what they would do back then, but that would be a disaster. And so the Lord was trying to tell them, he's trying to give them a lesson and illustrate with something they would understand. He's saying, you've left me the fountain of living waters. I'm trying to give you like fresh water. Who likes, is there like a favorite brand of bottled water you like? I like Aquafina. I think that tastes good. Anyone else have a different brand? They like Polar Springs or something? All taste the same. Yeah. Polar Springs. Yeah, that's right. He's biased. He's from up north, where it's bottled. But it tastes so good, right? When you get that water, I don't know if you've ever had tap water, and it's like, okay, I can drink it, but it's not very good. But you get a nice bottle of water. That's what the Lord is. He's like, I'm giving you the freshest, best tasting water of life you can desire. But then you're going around and you're looking for this water that's just sitting in a cistern, and it's not even there because as soon as you pour it in, it's leaking out and it's gone. And that was Israel's situation. But there's actually a distinction in the Bible that you don't really see it right up on the surface. But Israel actually had a term to define the types of water. In fact, in the Bible it says living water. Living water. That actually meant it's referring specifically to water that was flowing. And so in the Bible, when it says living water, it's not talking about a cistern in the ground where it's just water in a pot or something like that. Living water is like a flowing stream, or a brook coming down, or water just flowing down from the mountains, and it's like fresh, it's alive. That to the Jews was living water. But if it was just regular, I don't think they call it dead water, but if it was just not living water, if you had water in a cup and you just set it there, like this is not living water. Although maybe you got it from the source of living water, it might be a little better, but if you dipped it out of the cistern and you had it in your cup, this is not living water. It's just regular water. And so Jesus is saying, I want to give you living water. In fact, it was only living water that they could use in the ceremonies and the rituals. It had to be living water because God wanted them to know He was the fountain of living water. He wanted to give them life, not some stale water that had been sitting there for months. Who knows how many bugs have gotten into it and such. But He wanted, that's what God was offering to them. But, instead of taking the water of life that the Lord was offering to them, they were seeking other things, to be satisfied in other areas. And, I think a good example is Solomon. And we've talked about it at some of the preachers and the speakers have talked about Solomon at convention and how he had a really good beginning, didn't he? Like, if you could win the race by having a good start, Solomon would have won, right? He had a really good start. He was beloved of the Lord. The Lord appeared to him and said, Solomon, what do you want? He said, Lord, I need wisdom. He just had such a good start. But he had another problem too. He looked for fulfillment in other areas, not just the Lord. And in Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 10, and this is a different translation, but I like how it words it here. In Ecclesiastes 2 and verse 10 it says, or I should say, he writes, I did not restrain myself from getting whatever I wanted. I did not deny myself anything that would bring me pleasure. Wouldn't that be fun? Maybe your mom takes you to the mall and says, what would you like? You can get anything you want. Okay, let's go. Hope you have some good shoes on, Mom. We're going to go to a lot of stores. Yeah. That was Solomon. He didn't restrain himself. But what he was doing, he was drinking from all these different sources of water. And the problem was it would never satisfy. It would for like a little bit. Just long enough to hook him, to keep him going to the next thing and the next thing. It felt good for like, I don't know how long, a day or something, and then he'd be thirsty again. And longing again and empty again. Because when you do that, it's like trying to fill your heart. Like, God says your heart's like a cistern and you're trying to fill it with other things and it's broken and it's just leaking right out. That's what the pleasures of the world are like. That's a really good illustration that the Lord is giving to Jeremiah, because when you go and seek things in the world, how long does it last? Have you ever done that? Like you go on a binge of something, watching TV or playing video games or hanging out with friends, and you stay up all night and such, and that feels it's like lots of fun. How long does it last? Right until the next morning, right? And you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I stayed up too late, or it's gone. And then you say, how could I feel better? Well, I have to do it again. I have to go do something else and fill myself, because it's all gone. And there's many things in the world like that you can seek after it, and it's really fun for a moment, and then it's gone. Right? And some examples, I'm just pulling examples out here, but you think about sports. Watching sports or playing sports is fine. I did that all growing up in high school, and I still enjoy, getting out there and playing games and stuff. But some people are so consumed by it, right? That it's like all their energy, all they think about. If they pull out their phone or something, and you say, "What are you doing?" It's something sports related. It's like, "Oh, it's fantasy football," or something. It could be anything like that. Now, if you fantasy football players out there, don't worry. Don't feel condemned or anything like that, but don't let it consume you either. But that's just an example. Where some people get so consumed by it, there's nothing left for anything else. There's nothing left for the living water. I think there's a reason why professional sports players are some of the highest paid people in the world, right? As far as celebrities and stuff. I mean, they're paid millions upon millions of dollars, and I think Satan. He likes to give them good salaries because they're doing him a favor. They're distracting people from following God and from focusing on what really matters in life. But you could put anything into that example, right? What do you think would be some other examples? What's some examples of things in life that distract us, not what we want? Anyone think of something? Life. Well, what in life? What specifically in life? Food, exactly. Right? You can get so focused on food, Is anyone's favorite channel the cooking channel or something? Everyone's watching stuff. That's not bad, but you focus on that. Be your world. What else? Oh, I see someone's holding up their phone. Oh, an honest heart. No, that's true. Yeah. Your phone, which really it's not the piece of plastic and glass that's the problem, right? It's what it connects you to. Right, that you're so connected in with relationships and talking to people and check it out, the internet and stuff. There are some people, this is really scary, there's some people that are on their phone like 4 or 5 hours a day. Just, I don't know how they work or how they go to school or anything, but it's like, they're going to get arthritis in their neck because they're going like this all day. It's just but it's one of those things that because they're drinking at that fountain, it's never going to satisfy. It'll always drain away, so they always have to go more. It's like, well, I only did 3 hours yesterday. I'm still thirsty. Let's try it for 4. Play games or whatever. So, internet, music, social media. There's a lot of things you could put into that will not satisfy. And part of that, one part of that is about relationships. Relationships can be a big thing. And it's okay to have relationships, but remember when Jesus went to the woman at the well, and she was one who definitely was trying to find something, right? She was thirsty, and she was drinking all over the place and not finding it. What was it about her that we know she was overbalanced on relationships? Remember how many times she was married?
4.
5 times. She was married 5 times. But what she was doing was she was just trying to find something to satisfy an emptiness in her life. But she was, instead of looking to the Lord, she was looking to human relationships. And that's a danger in life. If we look to human relationships, whether it's our friends or, or trying to, people of the opposite gender, opposite sex, you want to have that fulfillment. The problem is it'll never really satisfy. It'll be like that broken cistern that is just, you fill it and it's there for a minute and then it all drains out and you got to fill it again, and it's a continual cycle. And we have to watch out for this. Because Jesus described, one of the biggest problems of the last day in Matthew 24 and verse 12. He said, because iniquity will abound, love of many is just going to grow cold. Because people are just looking to fill up at the next thing and the next thing, and they're content. Hey, I know it's going to drain out, but as long as I keep filling it and I can keep doing that, then I'm okay with it. But there's a problem, is that it causes our love for the Lord to grow cold. So there is no love. So, we see the problem, right? That's a problem. These broken cisterns. What do we do? What can we do to fix that and so that we don't have a broken cistern, or so that we can have living water? Well, in Revelation 21, you don't have to turn there, but Revelation 21 and verse 6, here's what the Lord, how He comes to us and what He's offering us. Revelation 21:6 says, I am the Alpha and the Omega, beginning and end, and I will give unto him that is thirsty of the fountain of the water of life freely. Anyone that's thirsty, just come unto me. I'm the beginning and the end. I contain everything that you need. But I want to notice the qualification, right? Because we realize in the Bible there's certain qualifications. Salvation is a free gift, but you have to pay a cost for certain things. What's the qualification for this? How do we get satisfied and filled with living water? What was that? Thirsty. That's it. He does not say, you who are perfect, you who have never disobeyed your parents, or you who have, you're holy, or you who are righteous. He just says you who are thirsty. That's the only thing. All we have to be is a little thirsty and say, Lord, I'm tired of drinking of these other things. Lord, I want to drink from you and be satisfied with you. Sometimes the most important prayer, we recognize things are a little off. Maybe we've been drinking some other sources in it and we've become empty. Sometimes the most important prayer we can pray is, Lord, make me thirsty. Lord, make me thirsty for you. And we can be thirsty for other things, but we need to say, Lord, make me thirsty for you, so that I will come and drink the water of life. Jesus, He said in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are they that hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. And so when we hunger and thirst for God ways, when we're willing to forsake our own ways, God says, hey, I'll fill that kind of person. Doesn't matter who it is, as long as they're thirsty. But we do have to be willing to forsake. That's the thing. I don't know if you've ever, done experiments or you've played around with something like oil and water. Try to pour them in the same vessel. It doesn't really work. There can never be a joint. There's always going to have that separation, or it's just going to be something nasty that you don't want to drink. When you combine them, is that we have to be willing to separate ourselves so that clean, pure water can go into our heart and stay and make us clean and pure, and keep us clean and pure. To be filled with this living water. There's a wonderful promise that Jesus gives us, and that He gave us in John chapter 4. And about for those who seek Him, and in John chapter 4 and verse 13. And this is the account of the woman at the well. It says, Jesus answered and said unto her, whoever drinks of this water shall thirst again. And He was speaking to the woman at the well. And he's pointing to the natural water. He said, look down that well. Whoever drinks of this water, this regular water, you're going to thirst again. But I'm going to offer you something different. I'm going to offer you something supernatural. Shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him, shall be in that person, a well of water springing up into everlasting life. And that's the promise, is that he who comes to me, whoever comes to me and just says, Lord, I'm thirsty. The Lord says, I'll give you water to drink, and you'll never be thirsty again. When we seek our own way, there's that continual thirst. People in the world, they won't admit it, but they're always thirsty, always full of desires, because there's only one thing in the world that can ever satisfy the desire that we all have in our hearts, and that's the Lord. He can give us that satisfaction that we are created to have fulfilled by Him. And so the world, they'll go out and do crazy stuff, you name it, that you can do it out there. But it's just because people are hungry. They're thirsty for God, even though they won't admit it. But when we come to the Lord and drink, we hear His word and we hear His voice, and there's a satisfaction that will never leave us. We'll be satisfied, and that's something I can attest to. I remember being a young person, and I'm still kind of young. I wouldn't say I'm old yet. I haven't hit the big 40 yet, so. But I just remember being a young person and having that longing, and having that, even though I even was saved, you could say, but yet wasn't really walking totally with the Lord. There was just like a longing, to do other stuff, hang out with my friends, not doing even super bad stuff, but just not really following the Lord. But yet, when I got serious with God and really met with Him, I realized a difference in my life. There was like this, I didn't have that ache or that longing anymore because it had been satisfied by the Lord. Now, He is the one who gives true satisfaction. But there is a key. And sometimes this can be confusing because you read these verses and you think, well, if I come to Jesus, I never thirst again. What does that mean? Because do you just take one drink from Jesus? No, that doesn't really make sense, right? That would be easy. I'm just going to read this one chapter and I'm good. I'll just read John chapter 4 and I'm good for a long. That'll do me for about a year. And I'll read another chapter next year. That's not really how it works, right? Because in one sense, He's not saying that He gives us a magic drink and we're never, we never need anything else. But what He's saying is that if we come to Him and drink continually from Him, we'll never thirst for those things out there anymore. Those things that never satisfy, those things that will just turn us aside and never fulfill us. We'll never have to deal with those desires and that emptiness anymore. But we still have to continually come to Him each day. And we have to come to the river, that river of living water. We have to come to Him. And what does that really mean? Is that we come to Him in prayer. Is that we come to Him in the Word each morning. That we come to Him in going to church. That we come to Him in obedience, obeying our parents, or whatever the Lord is leading us in. That as we submit to Him, that God is giving that living water that will sustain us and satisfy us. And that illustration of living water, I think God did that for a purpose. If you ever have a meeting with God at camp or something, or a good church service, and it's like, oh, that was really good. But then you try to live on that experience for the next 3 months without having something fresh from the Lord. That doesn't really work. Right? It's like that cistern. Even the living water won't last you for very long. You have to keep going back and drinking of that. And so the Lord's saying, I'll give you living water. I'll give you that water that's alive, but you have to keep coming, to that stream each day. The old is not good enough. Even if you had a massive meeting with God, and it's like having a cistern in the ground, and there's maybe 1,000 gallons of water in there, and you can just kind of keep drinking from that. Yep, I had that experience way back at camp. Yep, God met me. Yep, and when you talk to people about God, yep, that experience at camp. But God says, no, I want it to be living water. The water from the past is not good enough. I want to give you the water that's flowing in that stream right now for you. And that will make you alive. that will give you strength to face whatever you're facing. And so we have to continually come to the Lord. You know, the Lord said to Israel so very often, today, if you'll hear my voice. He didn't say, I was speaking to you yesterday. Yesterday, if you'll hear my voice of what I spoke. He said, today. You know, I'm speaking to you today. I want you to hear my voice today. And then the next day, he'll speak something else. You know, he wants to lead us on. But the promise is that if we will hear him today, we'll never need to experience that thirst, that lack that we had before. So, you know, finding our satisfaction in life, or where our satisfaction is very important. You know, we want to be those who are satisfied in the Lord. We find our satisfaction in him, in our delight. You know, that the Lord becomes our delight. Because we're drinking from him each day. I remember, Pastor Bailey's wife, Audrey Bailey. There was a story I heard her share. Is that one day the Lord spoke something to her, and he said this. He said, "There's something more important than just doing my will." And she had to think for a moment. It's like, what's more important than doing the Lord's will? It's like, isn't that everything? You know, we talk about obedience. That's such a huge thing, right? And so she's trying to think, what's more important than obeying God and doing his will? And the Lord responded to her. He said, delighting to do my will. What do you have when you have someone who's just doing your will, but not very heavily? Well, you have like a servant or a slave or someone you can boss around, right? But not really a friend. But when you have someone who delights to do your will, that's different. And that's who the Lord's looking for. You know, someone who will delight to do his will because they're just satisfied because of the river of God. They're satisfied in their relationship. They're delighting because they're drinking of the living water. And that's what God wants of us, is to have that experience of drinking of the living water each day, being refreshed each day. And maybe the living water can do a lot of good stuff. You know, it can wash us, cleanse us, strengthen us, anoint us. And God wants us to have that. There's one last verse, just here closing. It's Psalm 107, verse 9. Psalm 107, verse 9. It says, He satisfies the longing soul, and He fills the hungry soul with goodness. He satisfies the longing soul, and fills the hungry soul with goodness. And it kind of comes back to what we said before. One of the best prayers to pray is, Lord, make me thirsty. Lord, make me hungry. Lord, I need to experience your goodness, and it's good to be honest with the Lord. You don't want to be dishonest, because He knows anyway. He can already read your heart. He already knows your heart. You can't lie to Him. Well, you can lie to Him, but He already knows the truth. But it's to say, Lord, I'm not hungry for you. Lord, I don't have that desire. And I realize I need it. I want it. Lord, just make me hungry, make me thirsty, and fresh for you. Take away my thirst for those other things. Lord, replace it with a thirst for you. And that God can do that. And He can't just, it's not that He can just do that, it's that He longs to do it. He desires to do it. With even more than we want it done in our lives, He wants to do it in our lives even more. He satisfies the longing soul. He fills the hungry soul with goodness. And so we need to purpose in our hearts to abandon those leaky cisterns with that dead water. The water that never satisfies, and it's gone anyway in an instant, the next day. But we can come to Him and say, Lord, make me hungry, make me thirsty for you in a fresh way. God can do it. And then as we have that hunger, we can come each day to the fountain of living waters, and we can satisfy so that we never have to long or thirst for anything else again. And it's only